They say justice comes slow in the suburbs, but that morning, it came crashing in before I'd even had a chance to wipe the sleep from my eyes. The first thing I heard wasn't birds or whine through the pines, but a racket, the dogs going wild, tires chewing up my gravel drive, and something that sounded suspiciously like trouble. I pulled on my robe, stepped outside, and right there, right in the pale light of dawn, stood Karen. Not just any Karen. HOA president, queen of pearl necklaces, sunglasses at sunrise, and a sense of entitlement so dense it had its own gravitational pull. She was stuffing my honey, dozens of golden jars I'd worked all summer for, into the back of her white SUV like she'd just found a sale at Macy's. She saw me standing there, shouted, "Oh, don't worry, John. The HOA will make good use of this," then peeled out, trailing dust, tire marks, and a rage in me that felt hot enough to melt beeswax. I glanced toward the woods behind my property, Bear Hollow, the locals called it, and felt an idea start to buzz in the back of my mind. It was sweet, a little wild, and maybe, just maybe, exactly what the universe had ordered. Now, I know how all this sounds, but if you've ever lived under the thumb of an HOA, you'll know every neighborhood's got that one person who thinks the rules don't just apply, they belong to them. For us, that was Karen Mitchell. She'd been running things ever since the last president finally threw in the towel. The woman was a storm in pastels, clipboard ready, smile sharp as thistles, voice that could turn any complaint into a federal case. Trash bins out 2 minutes late? $50 fine. Barn painted the wrong shade of red? That's a violation, neighbor. Bird feeder attracting wildlife? That's an environmental hazard. She once told me, "John, the bees make my flowers too sticky," and the next week, they're aggressive with my cat. Never mind that her cat had clawed open a hive and learned, the hard way, that bees don't play. For 20 years, those bees have been my therapy, my legacy, really, ever since I retired from teaching biology. Built the hives myself, kept them tucked away at the edge of my land, far enough not to bother anyone. Followed every rule, every page in the HOA handbook, but Karen always found something to fuss about. Still, I never thought she'd actually steal from me. Seeing her drive away, my jars rattling in her trunk, I wanted to raise hell, call the sheriff, bang on every door. But I just stood there, staring at the sticky, empty shelves, the air still thick with that sweet summer smell. Later, she strutted past my yard like she owned the pavement, waving at neighbors, shouting, "Your honey's delightful, John." We sampled it at the HOA brunch. My honey, the honey she'd flat out stolen. When I called her out, she shrugged. "Oh, don't be dramatic. It's shared produce. HOA property lines, John." She said it with that laugh, smug, smooth as butter, the kind that makes you want to scream into a pillow. The bees work for everyone, she told me. Never mind that the HOA had never paid for so much as a single jar lid. I bit my tongue, forced a smile, and told myself, if logic worked on her, the world would be a much simpler place. By the end of that week, she'd passed out my honey like party favors, bragging about local sustainable gold on Facebook with photos, her posing with my jars lined up, captioned, "Supporting community sustainability." I wanted to call the cops, but I knew how it'd go. Karen had friends on the board, and no officer was going to care about a honey heist. So I waited. I watched. I remembered every time she'd push things too far, like the time she fined me over my old wooden mailbox, or tried to ban bird feeders because they attract wildlife. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd meet some wildlife soon enough. See, Bear Hollow was named for a reason. Every summer, a couple black bears would come wandering, hungry for something sweet. Never caused trouble, just tipped a trash can, moved along. But they loved honey. That evening, sitting on my porch with a cup of tea, I watched the tree line, felt the wind shift, smelled the pines. I smiled, not with malice, but with a kind of anticipation. Nature, I thought, always find a way to balance things out. The next morning, as I checked the hives, I caught Karen's SUV down the street. Trunk popped, her arms full of my jars. I locked eyes with her, smoker in hand. She blinked, hesitated, then plastered on that fake smile and said, "Just grabbing a few more jars for the gift baskets. You don't mind, do you?" I didn't answer, just stared until she finally slammed the trunk and drove off. That was it for me. Time for justice. Nature's kind. That night, I left out a few old honey buckets behind the shed, just leftovers sticky with sweet residue. Didn't take long for the scent to drift into the woods. Next morning, I heard a rustle, big, heavy, moving through the brush. I let the world do what I couldn't. Karen thought she could regulate everything, but there are forces bigger than any HOA clause. I spent that day sketching a map, figuring out how to lay a subtle scent trail from Bear Hollow right to the edge of her backyard. Waited until dusk, cicadas humming, air cool, pine needles soft underfoot. I smeared honey along trees, fence posts, all the way to the blackberry thicket by Karen's fence. The same bushes she tried to get removed for being unkempt until she learned they were protected as native species. The universe loves irony. By midnight, I was back on my porch, flashlight and binoculars in hand. And there they were, a mother bear and her cub, noses twitching, following the golden trail I'd left. They ambled into the backyard, right up to Karen's brunch table, still set from her last community event, jars lined up, labels reading Karen's honey bliss. The bears dug in. The next morning, as Karen hosted another gathering, white tablecloths, mimosa pitchers, fake smiles, the bears strolled out of the woods. People screamed, tripped, scrambled for the doors. Karen herself sprayed them with a garden hose, shouting, "This is private property." The bears didn't care. They licked honey off the tablecloth, content as could be. The footage, someone posted it on the neighborhood group chat, went viral. Comments poured in. Bears crash, HOA brunch. Is this a sign? Some folks laughed. Some blamed my bees. Karen, of course, blamed me. She called an emergency HOA meeting, filed a motion to ban beekeeping, composting, and install alarms. Didn't pass. Even her besties on the board had seen enough. But Karen wasn't done. That night, I watched her sneak around the yard, flashlight in hand, hoodie pulled over her head, pouring honey on my decoy hive, trying to set me up, stage evidence for another wildlife complaint. Lucky for me, and unlucky for her, I'd upgraded my cameras. Got the whole show in HD, her cursing, slipping, muttering about proving it. The next day, she called another emergency meeting, waving her phone around like a smoking gun. But when I plugged in my footage, her, on tape, planting the honey herself, the room erupted. Her allies finally broke ranks. Karen stormed out, red-faced, muttering about biased men. She kept fighting, door-to-door gossip, wild rumors about mutant bees and contaminated honey, warning everyone the bears would return. And you know what? She was right. A week later, I left out a bucket of spoiled honey on a still night, and by morning, 2 bears had paid her yard a visit, flattening her flower beds, flipping her recycling bin. She stood on her porch, waving a broom, screaming trespassers at the wildlife she'd summoned. Then came the lawsuit. Mitchell versus Harris. Emotional distress, property damage, wildlife endangerment. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. My lawyer, Lisa, bless her patience, said, "Let's just bring the evidence." So we did. In court, Karen wore a neck brace and sunglasses, dramatic as ever. Her lawyer tried to spin a tale of deliberate bear luring, but Lisa just played the footage. Karen, in all her midnight glory, pouring honey on my hive, then the bear brunch chaos, guests fleeing, Karen diving into a punch bowl. The judge, weary, pinched the bridge of his nose and said, "Miss Mitchell, you're suing because bears visited your brunch, which featured honey you stole from this man." The courtroom nearly burst out laughing. Karen sputtered about community property. The judge banged his gavel. Case dismissed. "I need a vacation," he muttered, and everyone, even the bailiff, cracked a smile. Karen moved out not long after. Packed her SUV, barked orders at the movers, never once looked my way. The street felt lighter. Fairview Oaks breathed easy for the first time in years. The new neighbors, Emily and David, turned out to be teachers. They baked bread, planted a vegetable garden, asked about starting their own hives. The board renamed Mitchell Park back to Cedar Grove. And the only drama in the group chat was folks debating whether my honey or Emily's bread was better. But the best part? One evening, just as the sun dipped behind the trees, I found fresh paw prints near the hives. The bees buzzed softly, undisturbed. I left out a small jar by the tree line, a thank you, not bait. Life settled into something peaceful, something earned. I sometimes wonder if Karen ever learned anything. Power doesn't mean control. You can't boss nature. You can't force respect. You have to earn it, like the bees taught me, like the bears reminded her. Maybe, somewhere in her new town, she'll finally get it. If you take anything from this story, let it be this: sometimes you've got to let time and karma do the heavy lifting. Justice, when it comes, isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet hum of bees, the soft exhale of a neighborhood finally at peace. So now I'm curious, what's your wildest HOA story? Have you ever tangled with a Karen? Or seen karma catch up with someone in the best possible way? Drop your stories below. And hey, if you want more tales of justice served up sweet, don't forget to subscribe. There's always another chapter in these suburbs, and you never know when nature might take the wheel.